Hello and welcome to episode 2 of this tutorial series on how to make your own website from scratch. So in episode 1, what we went over is the software we needed to create our own web pages, which was a text editor and the web browser. We also went over the basic skeleton of a HTML document, which was the HTML tag, which has within it the head tag and the body tags. And we remembered that each tag has to be closed off with the slash and the same words as the opening tag. So body needs a slash body to close it off. Same thing as HTML needs a slash HTML and everything else. So in this tutorial, what we're going to be going over is styling. So if you remember in episode 1, we had something that looked a little bit like this: margin left 50 pixels. So px is for pixels, and margin left means from the left push me how many pixels, so 50 pixels. So I expect my title to be pushed to the right by 50 pixels. There we go. So how did I do that? I defined that by using something called CSS, stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And the reason we use cascading behavior here is because we want the most important or the most recent styling rule to be applied. So if I had margin dash left 50 pixels and then I overrid it with margin left 0, I should expect margin left 0 to override the 50 pixels. So I can also type in 0 pixels, but to make things a bit more readable, 0 looks pretty nice. So if I was to reload that, there we go. I expect the 50 pixels to get overridden. I mean, it's still there. If I have a look at here, it's still there, but you can see it's crossed out. It's saying that this is the most recent one, ignore anything before that. And so that's this cascading behavior we get from using CSS, and it's extremely useful when creating the look of the website and the feel. So there's 3 ways to apply CSS, therefore styling, to your web page. One, to do it on the HTML tag like that, but that's not recommended. And the reason that's not recommended is because let's say you have multiple of these, right? If I figure out that, oh, actually, I kind of like that 50 pixel margin there, I have to do it 3 times. And that could get quite tedious and annoying. So imagine you had Twitter and each tweet, you had to change it. That would take absolutely forever if you were to do that by hand. So what can we do to fix that? Well, we can either remove them all from there, right? Remove it all from the header tag, sorry, the div tags here. So don't use them on the tag. There's 2 other things we could do. So we can either stick it in the header tag by going style tag, don't forget to close off the style tag, and to go div. So I know that this is a div tag because within the greater than and less than equal sign, it's div. So I can select it by going div, curly brackets, opening and closing. And then in here doing margin left 50 pixels like that. So what's happening here? In the head, which defines the metadata, which also includes style, we basically select every single div. You can see that when I double click that, it selects them, every single div here, right? And it says apply this styling rule to it. So if I was to reload this, nothing should change, except for, of course, that I've created 2 more. So something should change, but you can see that the margin left now is being applied to each div, and I've only typed in once. So if I came to do a change, such as, oh, I don't actually like 50 pixels, I want it to be 0, and hit reload on that, there we go, done. It's super quick, it's super efficient, and it keeps your code clean. And it also keeps files a lot smaller, so that when you're transferring them over the internet, they're a lot smaller. So that's great, but it's still not quite what we want, because every time I reload this page, I'm going out, to the server, and well, right now I'm going out to my file system, but if this was a real website hosted on a server, I'd be going out to the server each time, asking for the whole HTML document, and that's gonna bring back everything in here. And if this style rule is quite substantial, like a couple thousands of lines, that file can be quite heavy on the loading time. So we don't want that. The problem with a HTML document is that it's not cached, so it's not saved. The browser always tries and gets a version of it. It never saves it on your machine. But if you were to import it using the link tag, typing in rel, which just specifies that this is a style sheet, type. Actually, we don't actually need the type anymore, so we'll just do href like that, and styles.css could be anything. Could be, my awesome look, but we'll just keep it to styles for now. Styles. And unlike every other tag we've looked at so far, this is a void tag, meaning I can close it off right away with a slash and that greater than sign. And the reason for this is because you can't have content within the link. You can't put like my title within that tag. So you can just close it off right away. Same thing goes with an image tag. You can't put your own content within that. So it's a void element. You close it off right away. You don't need the ending tag. So currently this won't work. Right, so if I go like that, this won't work, and it's actually going to throw me an error. See, failed to load resource, and that's because I haven't created that file. So I need to create a file called styles.css, and it's also got to be at the same location on my file system or server as this HTML document. But on my server or on my file system, I want to structure it a bit better. I don't want all my files to be at the same level in the directory. I want it to be within a CSS folder, so I know that all my styles are within that folder. If a client comes to me and he's like, I want to change the look of this button, I'm not gonna search through hundreds of files. I'm gonna know that that's styling. Let me go to the CSS folder, open the styles.css file, and edit there. So to do that, we'll create a new file. I'm gonna save it right away. In the web tutorial here, I'm gonna create a new folder, call it CSS. Remember, we're going into the CSS directory and then looking for styles.css in here, and up here, save as. I'm just going to call it styles.css like that. Cool. So now that we have this styles.css file created and in the correct folder in here, we can start styling these elements that we have in here from a completely different file, and this file will actually get cached so that when we make that first request to a new website, that styles is going to get cached on the browser, so that the next time I visit it, or if I just visit another web page, the styles is already going to be saved on my machine, so I don't have to wait for it to get downloaded from the server again, which is very useful if these styles.css files are quite big, so quite substantial, and some of them do get to a couple thousands of lines, so it does speed up the load speed, definitely on a mobile device. All right, so let's say that now I want to style everything in this document to be like centered. So the way to do that would be to, I just selected that body element here, that body tag, just did text align center, and save that, hit enter there. There we go. From a file, I've managed to apply styling to tags in my HTML document. So here, if I was to change the H1 tags to be text align to the left, so that's the cascading behavior we were talking about before. Here we go, text align and then left. All my titles will be to the left, and that's because they're actually being overridden. That's the cascading behavior, and that's why it's so useful, because it allows us to do things like this. So see, text align center, and then it says, oh, actually this H1 tag is more specific to my H1 here, and it also comes in earlier, so we're just going to ignore it. Right. So that's a quick introduction to how to add CSS styling to your web pages. And there's a couple more things we can do with CSS, which adds to the power of it. So we can give these HTML tags IDs, such as my div1 or anything. So let's say title, right? And then we'll give all these h1 tags classes, my headers, like that. So we can't forget to give that to every single one. Now, I should probably tell you that a class can be added to as many elements, so I can add my headers to as many elements as I want. But when it comes to IDs, they're unique. I can only add title to this one now. But see, if I was to do this, that's not allowed because an ID is meant to be unique. If I select an ID, it should only apply to one element somewhere in this document, only one. So if I have two, it's only going to select the first one it runs into, and the other one that's further down the document is just completely going to be ignored, right? So how do I select these elements from a CSS file? So before, I showed you how to select the div and the body, sorry, not the div, but the body and the h1 tag, right? And all I did was type in body and h1. Well, let's say for the ID, which is called title, I would select that with a hashtag. So a hashtag is for IDs, right here. Let's give it a color of red. And to select the class, it's a full stop, it's a dot. So dot my headers, like that. Color, let's give it green, like that. So what do I expect from this styling right now? So I'm going to select the ID title, which is this div, and I'm going to give it a color of red. My headers will all have a color of green. So I expect from here that because this element has a color of red, every element under here will also have a color of red unless I override it down the line, which I indeed am at my headers with the color green. So I expect this to be green, this to be red, this to be green, 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 green. So if we reload that quick, oh, actually not these two green because I'm only putting my headers on there. But if I was to remove that from there, put it here, this will now become green as well. So it cascades down the structure. So whatever is underneath, whatever is child of this div will also inherit the styles that tag has. So that can be extremely useful. So if I want, let's say a more useful example, if I want my body, all the text in my document, so all the text in my website to be exactly 18 pixels, so like by default, every character has the size of 18 pixels. Now down the line, I could override that, so my title will always be overridden because H1s and H tags, so H1, H2, H3, so on. They all have a set font size set to them. So by default, font size is 18. We can see that these ones have become bigger. So if I was to just buff that up to about 40, you can see that they'll get a lot bigger. And also the H1 tags do as well, because they're based off something called an EM, which is how many times it takes the font size and it times it by that. So 40 EM, if it's a 2 EM here, sorry, if it's 40 pixels, we're going to get 2 times the font size, so 280 pixels, and then whatever pattern there is on that. So there we go, 92 pixels, that's high. But we'll go over that in a later tutorial. So yeah, so that's a good way to demonstrate that all the childs of your styling rules will also inherit from the parent. So that's basically what we just seen there. So that concludes this small tutorial on styling. And I mean, as we go along with these tutorials, we're going to learn a lot more about styling and how to make things look pretty and exciting and good looking for the user. So don't worry about that. We're just going to start with the basics for now. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.